So in honor of this week's speaking engagement that I have at SupplySide West about kind of like the future of sports nutrition, I was given some possible Q&A questions that could come up in the panel after kind of like the keynote that I give. So I thought I'd kind of run down these questions on first impression and give you guys my thoughts on these particular questions that are kind of around sports nutrition 2020, which is only 2 years away. So first one surrounding, in the next 2 years, what role does CBD play in the sports nutrition world? I think ultimately this comes down to a regulatory question. In the next 2 years, do we believe that it will be kind of federally legal for CBD products or maybe even all of marijuana? I think if we're looking on only a 2-year kind of perspective, I think that it's going to be hard for anything to materially change with CBD. You know, there's still going to be a lot on the market, and people are going to find ways to kind of get around some of the regulations, be that legally or illegally. But for most of like kind of big CPG brands and things of that nature, you kind of can't operate within CBD, at least in the US, because payment processing and banking and a lot of other things federally that you need to run your business is just kind of not available. So though I like the ingredient and though I think it's going to be the next kind of big functional ingredient in sports nutrition, beverage, food, I think at this point in the next 2 years, it's going to be hard for anything to materially change, but I'm hopeful maybe it will. Next question is kind of like around like Amazon's increased power in the market and how that's going to affect like the way people launch brands and just kind of the brand landscape in kind of the next 2 years. I think everybody saw like the new accelerator program that Amazon kind of launched, and Amazon's going all in on private labels. And I think this is nothing new than kind of all major retailers at this point, but the difference between Amazon and a lot of these other brands is that they kind of act as the market leader as a seller and the market leader as the platform, and they have a lot more data, intricate digital data that is much different than, say, a Walmart or a Kroger or things like that was kind of working within more analog ways. So Amazon will be able to kind of get things to market much quicker and faster. And I know, right now they're asking for even some supplier information from some vendors, and they're having this kind of incubator or accelerator program that they are asking people to apply to, and they can pick the kind of the best of the litter to have those brands build private labels for them, and then basically Amazon will execute a clause in the contract to buy those from them if they're successful. So I honestly, like at this point, I know there's only about 5 to 7 private label brands that are specifically kind of sports nutrition. But honestly, in the next couple of years, I expect that probably to be closer to 50. And what does that kind of mean to brands? It means that things are going to get a lot more competitive. You're also going to have a lot more business that's going to happen on Amazon. So I think people assume that the pie is going to stay the same size, and the pie is going to get bigger. So as the pie gets bigger and you get more competition, you might get a smaller proportion of the pie, but that slice of pie is actually a bigger piece. So I wouldn't abandon any of the Amazon launch strategies. I think brands don't utilize Amazon the right way. I think they only think about it as a customer or commerce partner. And I think there's just a lot more use out of Amazon for market testing and just kind of a lot of kind of advanced strategies to test in the market. But at this point, brands aren't doing that, so maybe in a couple of years they'll kind of smarten up to the things that I've been saying and kind of move forward with some of those ideas. So one area that I'm probably not all that confident about is around like globally in the next couple of years, where do we think a lot of the growth is going to happen outside of the US? And I think the easy one is the answer is like Asia. I think the problem with Asia is that it's also probably one of the most difficult areas for sports nutrition or just any consumer products companies to work within. You generally have to work with some consulates or people that are close to the government in China or in Asia, and I'm broadly saying Asia, but I'm mostly talking about China here. And because there's such a complexity, brands kind of struggle with how do we kind of get into the market and kind of protect our brand and kind of make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. It's much different than going into Europe or going into the Middle East This is a much more complex situation. So I think that still will be in the next 2 years the area of opportunity, but I think it's going to continue to kind of be an area that's going to be only for either brands that really understand international distribution or international kind of e-commerce strategies, working within kind of some of their different marketplaces and things like that, or kind of the biggest companies that have the resources to understand how to operate in Asia. So next kind of question surrounding like Generation Z and kind of do we have an early read on Generation Z, because I believe I read some numbers that said like they'll control somewhere around 40% of the buying power in 2020. So they are going to have a very big impact. And I think like sports nutrition brands need to understand that like whatever that millennials have been ushering in terms of like the digitization of commerce and social influencers and using of social media and just kind of being extremely transparent and just kind of having a strong bond with your consumer is something that Generation Z is going to go to the extreme about. They're not going to put up with a lot of the things that millennials do in terms of myself. I remember when I didn't have a cell phone. I remember when I didn't have the internet. And though I was of the age that got the internet when I was in my teens, I got a phone when I was in my teens. I had Facebook the first year it came out because I was a freshman in college that year. There was a lot of things that I had the benefit of, but I also remember a time when things were a lot more analog. So I give the benefit of the doubt on a lot of things. Generation Z is just not going to be that way. So commerce needs to be even quicker and faster, and digital and online is going to rule everything at this point. And if you think like, hey, things are going to change after these millennials get a little bit older, I guarantee it's not going to happen. If you're sitting in the old days and the past times and thinking about nostalgia, just honestly, I'm going to be pretty blunt here. Just quit. Just quit business. Just pack it up, sell your business. It's not going to work for you. So next kind of the question, kind of adverse to this, is around kind of like baby boomer in the next couple of years. Is there a market for sports nutrition products? To me, like the longevity generation and especially like all that, there's a lot of business that needs to be done with that generation. I mean, people are living longer. They want to live longer. They want to live healthier. They want products and they want to kind of take their health into their own hands. And sports nutrition is no different. They should be able to find niches and holes with a variety of different products, be it wellness products, be traditional kind of caps, powders, pills, functional foods, beverages. There's a lot of opportunity out there with the longevity generation. So it just kind of depends on if you want to kind of go all in on that marketing and kind of make sure that you are messaging, positioning, going after that. I think if you try to go after that market and you go after the younger market, you're gonna fail miserably. I think you have to kind of be about something or risk kind of being washed away, and that's kind of been proven in all of the in all of the markets at this point. So in a couple of years, I think it's just going to get worse. So specialize towards that if that's going to be what you're into. If not, don't try to like nibble into it. It's just not going to work for you. Question around like GNC Vitamin Shoppe next 2 years, where do they go? I don't think either one of them goes bankrupt and maybe that's even being provocative in that statement. But honestly, I think both of them, especially GNC with kind of the joint venture and kind of the things they're doing with China, I think that really elongates their brand because of the power it has over in Asia. I think in the U.S., they're going to have to figure out a lot of things restructuring wise, a smaller portfolio of stores, continue to kind of work on their merchandising mix to work within the trends of what's going on now. Vitamin Shoppe's going to kind of move into like a heavy brand, trend-driven wellness and that kind of world. I honestly think they have larger retail square footage footprint, so they can operate their business in a variety of different ways depending on kind of where the trends go. I'm kind of interested in that name a little bit more than GNC, and I know they have a new CEO in there, and they're probably going to be doing a lot of different changes. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're definitely going to be around in the next 2 years. But in what kind of role do they play? I think it's more wellness or nutritional supplements, and kind of I think leaning a little bit away from like sports nutrition products. Kind of the last question that I wanted to touch on was around like kind of the perception of sports nutrition is the thoughts in other categories, be it natural food, beverage, just mainstream media in general. Are they going to finally lay off sports nutrition, nutritional supplements a little bit, or is there going to be some more things going on? So honestly, I think it's probably going to be more of the same, because though there's a lot of the market leaders and thought leaders like myself and others that really are pushing towards the legitimacy of the industry and really trying to figure out how do we look better in mainstream media, and how do we clean up a lot of the mess. But there are much more people that are not worried about that than are worried about it, and unless there's some massive kind of like barrier of entry that's created, be it regulatory, manufacturing, safety, whatever that is, it's not going to be able to kind of wash out all of these new entrants that are coming in the market. With the low barriers of entry, it brings in a lot of riffraff, and some of that riffraff ends up turning out to be pretty bright stars within the industry. But for the vast majority of them, the 99% or so that wash out, all they do is kind of cloud up the industry with some bad marketing tactics, some bad products, and I think that's going to just kind of continue unless something drastically happens in the next couple of years with some type of regulation. It honestly could happen. I think Orrin Hatch is not running anymore, and that's basically been the man that's kind of controlled a lot of the regulatory with the dietary supplement market, because in Utah they have a lot of kind of contract manufacturing, so a lot of like the special interest industry type of stuff is geared towards Orrin Hatch. I know I think his son or something's going to run, so if he's anything like his father, he's probably going to do very similar things. So odds are probably things are not going to change all that much drastically, but if it does, the image of the sports nutrition segment could definitely use a little bit of polishing, and hopefully that happens. If you guys got some value out of this Q&A, make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, do all those kind of fun things to help me grow this channel a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. And I want to thank you guys for taking some time out of your day to listen to me, and I'll see you guys on the next one.